Hey guys, I'm going to show you how to use the advanced REST client, which is one of the greatest things in the world for testing your web services. So first of all, before I show you the REST client, obviously you have to have some kind of services set up in the first place to test. I added this new project in my web dev repository called Ajax client server. So I'm just going to make a copy of that here on my desktop. I'm going to go in there. There's a server directory. And I want to point out, and this is really important for the final project, that since this course focuses on the front end of web development, you're not supposed to, well, let's say, you're not required to understand really the details of the C# that's going on in the MVC layer. So the reason I provide the tech specs is so that you don't have to read the C#. This is very typical in the industry. When you are working with web services, you won't ever get to see the code. You won't ever get to see the details of how it works. You will just be provided with some tech specs by some type of an architect or developer who worked on the service layer. So I came up with a really simple example, and at the end we will go and look at the C#, but I just want to point out that you are really not expected to understand or even look at the C# layer. You're just supposed to look at these tech specs and say, oh, those are the services that are going to be there. So the first tech spec is for a service called Good Morning, and it's simply a GET. It has no parameters. It's very simple. It just returns me a message. So I'm going to open up my solution, and I'm just going to run it, and I'm going to let it run. I'm not going to really look at it at all. I'm just going to hit F5. So it says hello world. The only thing I really want to note here at all is the URL. So this is going to be important for when I write some code to look at it on the client side, or when I use the advanced REST client to look at it. So I do want to just kind of take note of that. I'm going to Control X, so I'm going to keep that copied to my clipboard. And with that, you see the server is running. I'm just going to minimize that. And if you're using Windows, you can see down here that IIS is running. So the server, and you can see down here, the server is running. So whatever, I've promised in my tech specs that there are these services there, and I've given the names in the specs. So just to test it, we're going to use the advanced REST client. So the advanced REST client is a extension. It's an extension in Chrome, and if you don't have it, you can go over here to Settings, and in Extensions. So if you don't have it, click down here, Get More Extensions, and just type in Advanced REST Client and click Install. That's all you need to do. Once you do that, come back here to this screen and make sure Allow in Incognito and Allow Access to File URLs. Both of these are checked, and you'll be good to go. So as long as you have the extension installed, then next time you open up Google Chrome, you click on your apps, and it'll be one of these icons here that you can click. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Advanced REST Client. It's going to load up. So before we get into this, I do want to say that in REST, which is like the concepts of how, not just how to get this to work, but kind of like the science of when to use get, post, put, and all the details of how to structure this stuff. I'm totally ignoring all that. We're just focusing on pure functionality here. So you'll see in my tech spec that the request is a get. So we leave get there. Now the URL, remember I copied it, so I'm just going to paste that. So before I type in the name of the web method, I have to remember that, and it'll show us back in the tech specs, I did put this note at the top. The following services are located in the home controller. So all of these services I wrote, Good Morning, Today's Diet, these are our web methods that I can invoke, but they're located in the home controller. So what that means in MVC, quite simply, is that you need to put home / before you access the name of the service. So everything that I do is going to be the location of my services, the name of the controller, followed by the name of the method. And in this case, I want to invoke Good Morning. So I really just paste in the name of the method, Good Morning, and I can click Send. And as you can see, you come back with a bunch of information. You have the status, 200 means it worked, a bunch of headers request and response headers that we don't really need to look at, and this is the important part. It came back and it said, "Good morning, Donnie." So if I read the text specs, it says this service simply responds, "Good morning, Donnie." So it appears to have worked, other than one little cap. Oh no, that's right. Everything worked. So a couple of notes, and I know this is obvious to some people, but I just want to save you from hours of banging your head against the wall. Home, so there's three variables here. There's the name of the URL that we're running, and again, if I run I'm just going to hit Control-Shift-F5, which launches my services again in a browser. So that again is the name of the base URL that I'm looking at right now. So that's the location of my services. That's one of the things you need to know, the location, the URL. So that is this first aspect. The second aspect is what is the name of the controller that contains my web method. And the third aspect is the name of the web method. So I think at this point I can show you, again, you don't need to look, but I do want to show you that inside of the server, inside of the controller, inside of the home controller, you'll see that good morning is the name of a method inside of the home controller. So when you see the URL and it says home/good morning, that really is a pretty good indicator that if you did look at the code in the background, there would be a class called the home controller and a method on it called good morning. And as you can see, it's a very simple method that just returns string "Good morning, Donnie" in a message. So again, I'm going to minimize that. I'm going to leave the server run. I'm going to go and look at this next method, today's diet. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and I'm really just going to paste it in there and hit enter. So it came back with a message, missing parameter, parameter name my weight, parameter type integer. So if I look back at the text specs, this is going to make sense because it says here that I have an input now, my weight. So you notice I didn't give it any information in the request, I just called it right here. I didn't give it any parameters in the request, I just said, hey, call today's diet. However, the text spec says this service will return me a message of what to eat based on my weight, which is one of the input parameters that I didn't give. So as you can see, we got all three possible outputs. We got a message, a parameter name, and a parameter type in the response. So the message was, hey, you're missing a parameter. Parameter name was, hey, you're missing the my weight parameter. And the parameter type was, hey, it's an integer. So you need to give me an integer called my weight. If my weight is missing from the request, the message will contain instructions to call the service with the appropriate parameter name and type, which just happened. So that was good. So all I have to do is make sure that I provide the appropriate input, my weight. So one easy way to do this in the REST client is just to change the URL, since we're calling a get in this case. And I'll get into more detail if I ever do a tutorial on REST. When to use get, when to use post, when to use put, when to use delete, and the details of all this stuff. But for now, a simple get. You can just put a command line argument today, or my weight equals, and I'll say I think I'm about 196 today. So then the message came back, said no junk food today. It's the day after Halloween today, so that's probably pretty good advice. However, if I put in something like, hey, I lost a bunch of weight, now I'm only 180, the message says you can eat whatever you want. So and again, nothing in here in the text spec really says anything about how the logic works of what message I get. It's not really important for the service to work. But just in case you're interested, again, you can look in here, and you'll notice in my code, any weight below 190 says I can eat whatever I want. Otherwise, it'll say no junk food today. So it's pretty simple. So that's how to use the advanced REST client. That's pretty much it. There's one other thing that I wanted to show you, and that's kind of just expounding on what we did previously using Ajax. So this is how to use the advanced REST client in a nutshell. The other thing I just wanted to show you was inside of this project here, I also have a client that has nothing to do with the MVC4 project. So obviously, you can use some code somewhere else, or even in the case of the advanced REST client, another application that's outside of my solution to access those services. Obviously, the services wouldn't be very useful if you could only call them within your own program. So I have some code here that strongly resembles stuff that we did in our previous labs, but in this case, it shows how to access the services using Ajax from outside. So this is just JQuery. That's the entire JQuery library. I have some HTML here, open with Notepad. So I'm just including my scripts. Then I have 2 buttons and a text input. And all they're going to do is, the first button is going to call the first service, the second button is going to call the second service, and the third, the text input is going to allow me to type in my weight for the second service. So these are just facilitating me to call those services from within an external page. So if we look at my scripts, I'm setting up this client scope, a variable, an object called client, just to give me some scope. I'm declaring a variable called base URL, so I won't have to type this crap in everywhere. And then, okay, so down at the bottom, as soon as the document's ready, it's going to find the good morning button and bind its click to this method here, call good morning method. It's going to find the today's diet button, the second button, and bind it to this method, call today's diet method. So all the document ready is doing is binding up my 2 buttons to these 2 functions. And then, so this is an example here of doing the exact same thing that just happened in the advanced REST client, except doing it with my own Ajax code. So notice carefully the carefully constructed URL that I'm using. I have my base URL, which is http://localhost:54403/home/goodmorning. So that's the URL. And I don't need anything else except the URL to get the alert for that. It's just going to come back and give me the result. So if I run my little page here and I click the first button, it literally called the service and got the response back, good morning, Donnie. And the second one is just a tiny bit more complicated because it has the same URL, except the name of the method is different, because in the text specs, that's the name of the method, right? So once again, there's a direct, you have to spell that exactly the same, because what this is saying is literally in the C# that is the name of the method, so you have to use that exact word. So base URL in the home controller, name of the method is today's diet. The only difference is now I'm going to grab the text box value from the screen and pass that as the my weight parameter. So I'm constructing this JSON payload as the input. We could also do it as a command line argument, just like we did in the REST client. So I could put like a question mark, my weight equals, and the value. You could do it that way too. But when things get complicated, you might be easier to work with just this data JSON payload, I think. And then, so this is really the same thing, except it has some data to input. So coming back here to the client, I'll just call it with nothing in there, and it says I'm missing a parameter, just like it did before. Again, if I give it a 195, it'll say no junk food today. If I give it a 180, it'll say eat whatever you want. So, this is kind of the example that we already went through in the past, and understanding how to use JQuery to make Ajax calls. The part I want to focus on, and kind of reiterate, since the purpose of this video is just to introduce you to the advanced REST client, was, this URL here is really important. It's got to be the base URL of your application, followed by a slash, followed by the name of your controller, followed by a slash, followed by the name of the method that you're trying to invoke. In this case, either good morning or today's diet. And obviously, as I already said, the second part of that is understanding that this service name in the text specs that you receive, it has to be exactly that. This is the name of the method that you're invoking on the server side. You don't have to look at the code to understand that. All you need to do is look in the text specs and understand that this is the name of the method that you're invoking. So base URL / name of the controller / this word. So if you do that, whether you're using a REST client or some Ajax code, it should work exactly the same. So that's good. And once again, just in case you want, you could open up the controller. Since in this case, I have given you access to the code. I'm going to stop that. And you can see that these two words, good morning and today's diet, which are the name of the services in the text specs, are indeed actual methods. So if you spell them wrong, it's not going to be able to find them in this class that you're calling. So these are the two things that you have to spell exactly right after the base URL. The name of the controller, which is the word right before the word controller in the class name, and also the name of the methods. So that's how you get it to work, and you can do that in either the advanced REST client or your own Ajax code.